morning. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. It's actually officially afternoon. And so welcome to this webinar Wednesday with Food Focus. And thank you so much for joining us. Today we have the honor and privilege of once again being able to represent the Dairy Standard Agency. Thank you so much. Yompi is actually sitting here with me. It's so great to be in the same room. Jacqueline, thank you so much for the opportunity of being able to help you with these webinars. It's always great for Food Focus to work with you. The topic for today, let us take the danger out of milk. And so for the next hour, we're going to be chatting with Marietta Vermaak, Tanya Blochbot, and Scott van Niekerk, and they're going to be telling us a whole lot of information about pasteurization. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you to the presenters. Jackie, I think this is a great topic. We've got 150 people that are very interested, so good content for those of us in the industry. So here you see your speakers. I have Scott van Niekerk, I have Marietta Vermaak, and I have Tanya Blochbot. So let's see you in the flesh, people. Put your cameras on so they know that I'm not talking to myself, but I have real people out there. Scott, Marietta, Tanya, won't you put your cameras on so that everyone can just give you a shout out and say hello. The first presenter today is Marietta Vermaak. It's great to chat to you, Marietta, again. Marietta is a dietitian and she works for the Consumer Education Project for Milk SA. She's been there for a good while. She knows lots and lots and lots about the nutritional aspects of dairy. And the project that she's involved with is really about communicating the health and nutritional benefits of dairy to the consumer. And there are lots of interesting activities and training. I've had the opportunity to chat to Marietta before about this work, and I have to say, I really think they're doing a fantastic job. She's also a co-author of this SA food-based dietary guideline, Have Milk, Mass and Yogurt Every Day. She's an active member of the IDF. She stands on their Committee for Health and Nutrition, as well as the Scientific Program Coordination Committee. And she's been all over the world and all over South Africa talking about dairy and health. And Marietta, I think you're going to talk to us today about the benefits of pasteurization and also dispelling some of those nutritional myths. So over to you, Marietta, for your presentation.
Thank you. Yes, and good morning to everyone. I am fortunate to present to you about heat treatment of milk and the effect of processing on the nutritional value of milk. There is a growing awareness among consumers of what is natural or unprocessed. And in the case of milk, it refers to the difference between raw milk and milk that has been processed or then pasteurized. Consumers often ask how processing may affect the nutritional value of milk and other dairy products. Despite the risks associated with consuming raw milk activists promote the production and consumption of unpasteurized milk as the perfect food of nature. They claim that raw milk is more nutritious than pasteurized milk and that it can prevent and treat many conditions and diseases, including allergies, cancer, and lactose intolerance. The general perception is that heat treatment changes the natural vitamin content and nutritional value of milk. The public is bombarded with large amounts of conflicting information surrounding this debate, and information is often presented in a biased way, resulting in the consumer being confused about what to believe. So let's look at milk processing. Milk processing involves various steps, including milk skimming, pasteurization, and homogenization. For the purpose of today's presentation, I will focus only on milk and the possible effects processing may have on the nutritional value of milk. Pasteurization is defined as heating each milk particle to a standardized temperature for a specific time without recontaminating the milk or milk product during the process. Pasteurization is used for two reasons: to make milk and milk products safe for human consumption and to improve the shelf life of milk by reducing the number of spoilage bacteria. In many developed countries, pasteurization of dairy products is a requirement. In South Africa, the law states that unpasteurized milk cannot be sold except in isolated cases where it is permitted by local authorities. The milking herd must also be certified as free of tuberculosis and brucellosis. In Canada, pasteurization of all commercial milks or milk is mandatory, and the distribution of sale and unpasteurized milk are illegal under the Food and Drug Regulation. Scotland introduced legislation in 1983, and in Australia, the dairy industry enforces regulation to ensure heat treatment of milk provides a high level of safety of all dairy products. However, some countries are more flexible, and if it comes to pasteurization requirements in the United States, for example, 29 states allow the sales of raw milk, but sales can only take place on the farm where the milk is produced, in registered retailers, or through cow sharing agreements. While in the UK, similar laws apply than what are practiced in South Africa. UK law stipulates that raw milk may be sold directly to consumers only through registered milk producing industries. Secondly, the cows must come from a herd officially free of tuberculosis and brucellosis, and the facility must comply with improved hygiene rules. It is also mandatory that raw milk must have a health warning label. With the advent of compulsory pasteurization, the incidence of milk-borne diseases dropped dramatically. In 1938, milk-borne outbreaks accounted for about 25% of all disease outbreaks in the United States, while in the beginning of the 21st century, milk and milk products were associated with less than 1% of such outbreaks. So let's look at the 3 steps of processing. Or milk's path from the farm to landing on the shelf as a product that is ready for consumption by the consumer. When milk is collected from dairy farms, it's subjected to certain standardization steps. First of all milk is skimmed. This is done to ensure that the product will have a specific fat level that we can generate. And for example, in South Africa, full cream milk has 3.4% fat, low-fat milk contains 1.5% fat, and fat-free milk has less than 0.5% fat. The skimming of milk is usually done at a temperature of 40 degrees Celsius by means of centrifugation, which separates the skim milk from the cream. There are various options of heat treatment of milk, which include pasteurization, which may either be a process of low temperature, long time pasteurization, or high temperature, short time pasteurization. We also have ultra-high temperature processing, that is what we know as UHT milk, and then sterilization. Low temperature, long-time pasteurization involves treating milk at temperatures of 63 to 66 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes, while high temperature, short time involves treating milk at 71 to 73 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. Some literature also refers to 83 degrees for 2 to 3 seconds. UHT pasteurization keeps the milk at a temperature between 130 and 140 degrees Celsius for 2 to 5 seconds. Sterilization is performed between 107 and 130 degrees Celsius for between 8 to 40 minutes, so not seconds, and produce milk that is shelf stable for very long periods. The 2 most commonly used pasteurization processes today, though, are high temperature, short time, and UHT pasteurization. It is also important to mention about the process that people often use at home to ensure the milk that they produce themselves is safe for personal consumption. In our country, there are many families that own 1 or 2 cows and produce milk for their own household use. In this case, we normally recommend that the milk should be heated at home. The most important thing to remember is that milk should not be boiled. Milk should only be heated to scalding point, at which time you then need to remove the pot from the heat source and allow it to cool down in the pot. Once it's cooled, it can be stored in clean containers in the refrigerator. The last step in milking processing is homogenization. This is a mechanical process that is used to reduce the size of natural fat globules of milk by pumping it at high pressure through a small valve at an average temperature of 50 degrees Celsius. The process breaks the fat particles into much smaller globules and distributes them evenly throughout the milk, thus preventing a cream layer from forming on top of the milk. So let's look at the effect processing has on the product, if there's any. From a nutritional point of view, milk offers many benefits, nutritionally and health-wise. It is well known to be a good source of proteins and essential amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals. Let's now move to the potential changes that may occur in milk due to heat treatment. Starting with the macronutrients, that is protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Approximately 80% of milk proteins consist of casein, which are the precursor of several bioactive peptides with antimicrobial activity and vector properties for calcium, zinc, copper, and phosphate ions in the body. The other milk protein, whey, have important physiological properties for their bioactivity. Heat treatment mainly modifies the functional properties of milk protein due to minor denaturation of the whey proteins. That is, for example, emulsifying, water binding properties, and solubility. But it has little effect on the digestibility and the nutritional properties of the protein. Heat treatment leads to only a 1% decrease in biological value of protein in milk and a 1 to 4% decrease in the lysine content of milk. However, this is only a marginal decrease, and milk remains one of the most valuable sources of lysine in the diet. When looking at lactose, lactose is the natural milk sugar or carbohydrate in milk, and it has interesting nutritional properties such as having a low glycemic index and prebiotic properties. It also promotes calcium and magnesium absorption. Common pasteurization conditions have no significant effect on the lactose level of milk, and raw and pasteurized milk have very similar lactose levels. When heating milk to temperatures above 100 degrees Celsius under slight alkaline conditions, the glucose part of lactose is converted to fructose, with the formation of lactulose as a result. This may be the reason for the slightly sweeter taste of UHT milk. Lactose can also be degraded to form certain organic acids, which can have an effect on the pH of milk and the lactase-producing bacteria in milk. Lastly, lactose also reacts on the Maillard reaction with milk proteins, giving milk that is treated at high temperatures a typically light brownish color. Of all the macronutrients, lipids are the least affected by heat. However, homogenization has an effect on the fat globule size, and the smaller droplet size in homogenized milk actually enhances milk fat breakdown. When looking at the mineral and vitamin content of milk after pasteurization, it is important to take in consideration the specific period of time milk is exposed to a certain temperature. It is this time and temperature combination that may have an impact on the nutritional value or the antioxidant characteristics of milk. Pasteurization does not cause any change in the concentration of minerals in milk. They are normally very heat stable, and heat treatment therefore have no significant effect on the bioavailability of calcium, and both the total amount of calcium and the bioavailability of calcium in the milk remain unchanged after pasteurization. The effect of pasteurization on iodine concentrations of milk is debatable. Some studies have shown as much as 20% decrease in iodine levels, while others shows that sterilization, which is a far more intense heat treatment, has no influence on iodine concentration. According to a 2020 systematic review and meta-analysis conducted by McDonald et al., a number of factors were listed that may actually affect the natural concentration of vitamins in milk. And these include the cow breed, the season, the country, the vitamin concentrations in feed, as well as the frequency of milking. The meta-analysis showed that pasteurization reduced the concentration of vitamin B12 and E and may slightly increase the concentration of vitamin A. Pasteurization of milk also leads to a significant decrease in vitamin C and folate, but it's important to keep in mind that milk is not considered as an important source of vitamin C or folate. So some analysis, however, showed a decrease in vitamin B2 concentration after pasteurization. When we specifically look at the antioxidant capacity of pasteurized milk, we saw that total flavonoid content was not influenced by heat treatment, and total antioxidant capacity was only 1.1% less than that of raw milk, while the antioxidant effect of zinc and selenium in milk remains stable throughout. In this table, we can see that the heat treatment at lower temperatures has no effect on the vitamin content of the milk, but the extended time and higher temperatures is what actually may affect some minor or cause minor decreases in the vitamin concentrations. Most of the time, these decreases are negligible, small. It's yeah, you can see that the HDST often have the least changes in milk content or the vitamin concentration. Comparing the nutritional value of raw milk with that of pasteurized milk, the bar graph once again confirms that there is almost no change in the vitamin content of pasteurized milk in comparison to raw milk. It is only the vitamin B12 that is progressively more sensitive to higher temperatures. While the minerals in milk, as said, are very heat stable and there's hardly, well, there's basically no change whatsoever. I only have time to discuss the claims of raw milk activists very briefly. Cow's milk allergy is a complex subject, and some literature do provide collective evidence that suggests an association between raw milk consumption and cow's milk allergy. A cow's milk allergy is always triggered by the total protein fraction in milk, and the majority of children tend to outgrow cow's milk allergies by the age of 4 to 5 years. And only 2% of the world's adult population experience cow's milk allergy. To date, only a few studies on cow's milk allergies have been performed with conflicting results, and more evidence is needed to obtain a better understanding of which processing methods are relevant to reducing the allergenicity of individual proteins present in milk. With cancer, the systematic review of McDonald et al. Does not support an association between raw milk consumption and cancer prevention. It is suggested that future research should include the quantity and frequency of raw milk consumption at all different stages of life. In conclusion, today we have looked at most of the possible effects processing may have on the nutritional value of milk. Pasteurization is a simple and effective process that destroys pathogenic microorganisms and has been recognized worldwide as an essential tool for protecting public health. In addition, milk and dairy products undergoes extensive and thorough safety and quality tests before reaching the marketplace. Modern science confirms that the benefit of reducing or destroying harmful bacteria outweighs the minimal effect of heat treatment on the nutritional value of milk. Milk and dairy foods are versatile and offer a wide range of nutritional benefits in an enjoyable, convenient, and cost-effective way. The contribution of the nutrients in milk within the context of a balanced diet and the role it plays in disease prevention and health promotion ensures that milk and dairy have an undeniable place in the nutritional guidelines of 84 countries worldwide. And that's it from me. So thank you, and I will welcome some questions later on. Thank you.
He's worked not only in labs, but also in production facilities. So he's always looked at the cow from a slightly different point of view, it looks like, Scott, because you work for QK Meats. But today we're going to be tapping into his experience regarding laboratory accreditation. He is currently with Separations in Johannesburg, where he's a sales professional, and really he's mostly involved in helping laboratory professionals to set up their labs to be able to do effective testing. And he's going to be taking us through what exactly happens with the phosphatase test and why is it so important. Scott, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your time. Today, as mentioned, I will be presenting a solution from MN, whom we represent at Separations, called the MN Phosphatase MI. Just a brief agenda on how the presentation will proceed. I'll just give a brief introduction on MN and Separations as a whole, then go straight into the purpose of the phosphatase test and product presentation on Phosphatase MI, and then to follow later at the end of this session, we'll then handle some questions and answers for you. Okay, so regarding Separations as a company was founded in 1989 by Mr. Paul Quaiser, who was originally a founder and director of Sarchem. He found a gap in the market per se to facilitate organizations in testing, and created a concept of a customer-centric product supply and support system to customers and labs out there. Since then, he has, or the company has grown, and to such a point to these days where we actually do several divisions or have several divisions. Today we now have the Water Techniques division, whom I represent, who specialize in water and environmental markets, as well as an exports division throughout Africa, a Biotechniques division that basically focuses on molecular techniques and testing, a Biopharm division that focuses on all aspects related to pharmaceutical production, as well as a robotics and service division to allow for automation, and a diagnostics team to facilitate all your hospitals and etc. Regarding MN, basic information on MN is that they are a fourth generation family owned company. They were founded as a manufacturer and basically started out in the filter paper business, and they've been in that business for well over 100 years. They do have many subsidiaries in France, Switzerland, and the US, and yeah, they have a major network of distributors around the world as well, should anybody ever require any of their products. What is important to note about MN as well is that you know, anything that they do offer is of the highest quality standards. All products are produced in Germany and do carry certified quality. Now, regarding the actual product itself, the Phosphatase MI and the phosphatase test, what is the purpose of the phosphatase test? Okay, basically the purpose of the test is to allow one to define whether or not milk has been fully pasteurized. How it does that, basically it looks into an enzyme called alkaline phosphatase, which is an enzyme that is present in all raw milks. As this enzyme is heat stable, it is a great indicator, you know, to check whether or not the milk has been pasteurized, as it does have a heat stability that is greater than that of many of the common pathogens that will be present in milk. The absence of it obviously indicates that, you know, correct temperature and correct time has been achieved to allow for full pasteurization. This makes the Phosphatase MI a great and valuable auxiliary QC tool for a quick check to see whether or not pasteurization has been completed correctly. As mentioned, it does, you know, check the presence specifically to that enzyme. If present, you know, what it will do is it will change color, i.e. yellow, and if not, the actual strip itself will remain unchanged. Okay, regarding a little bit more detail on the product itself, it is just a qualitative test paper, so if you need to go more quantitative, unfortunately there's not much that we have available that we can assist in on that front, but you know, in terms of quick qualitative checks, it is more than suitable. Its important notes are its limits of detection. 300 microliters of alkaline phosphatase in pasteurized milk is the limit of detection. It will change colors, you know, from white to yellow if alkaline phosphatase is present. And another key important note is its shelf life is approximately 1 year, and it should be stored in a refrigerator. Okay, basic instructions for use on such a strip. Very simple. You basically just dip the strip into milk, you shake off your excess liquid, following which, in order to prevent the test strip from drying out as well as cross-contamination, you will then place it into a polyethylene bag, and then from there incubate it at 36 degrees Celsius for approximately 1 hour, then assess for your color change. Interpreting the actual results, in the presence of alkaline phosphatase, it will turn yellow. At which point, if you've already picked it up during your incubation periods and in pre-checks, you can stop the test. For control measures, though, we do suggest that one also makes use of raw milk alongside the heated milk samples, just to make sure that the actual strips are working correctly. A yellow coloration, as mentioned, does indicate that the raw milk is present and that the milk was not sufficiently heated, and then should obviously be reheated accordingly. No coloration will indicate that the pasteurization was correctly completed. Should anybody need any further information on the actual test strips or any of the other related products from Marco & Nagel, they can visit Marco & Nagel's websites at www.mn-net.com, or contact Separations via their website or through email, and they can obtain that data accordingly. I thank you for your time. Very brief, but this is the main items that are available for one to assess pasteurization in milk. Thank you.
To finish our presentation, we have Tanya Blochbot, and Tanya has been involved with the Dairy Standard Agency for a long time. She's the operations manager. She's also the project manager for the National Dairy Monitoring Program, which is where the Dairy Standard Agency works in collaboration with health authorities. She has spent a lot of time around cows and milk products and dairy products. She's also a registered auditor. So Tanya, we'd love to hear from you with regards to the food safety aspects around pasteurization. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. If we talk about pasteurization of dairy products, what is required by South African law? And I'm going to focus during my presentation specifically on that. And in order to do so, I'm going to refer to Regulation 1555. That's the regulation relating to milk and dairy products, and it's part of the Food, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act. So before I start my presentation, I just want the audience to note that all the diagrams and tables used in this presentation is from the Dairy Processing Handbook. We call it the Sable Bible, published by Tetra Pak Processing Systems. Oh my goodness. I cannot move my slides for some reason.
Tanya? So Tanya, what happens is the mouse falls asleep. You just click the left-hand side of your mouse button, and then it should wake up again.
There we go. Yes, it's awake. Okay, if we look at the definition as stipulated in Regulation 1555, and I'm going to read it to you. It's pasteurization means the heat treatment as described in Annex B of a dairy product or an imitation dairy product. So pasteurization, as you all know, is a critical control point, a CCP, and think of it as a hurdle or a gate built into the processing flow in order to do what? If you look at point A, it is in order to kill off or destroy all pathogens. So in other words, the main purpose is to eliminate the microbial food safety risk in milk. Then this definition goes on by saying that in the case of milk, the result of the phosphatase test must be negative. And you can use the original phosphatase test, and I'm going to refer to that a bit later on, or any other test that is verified against the phosphatase test. And the last bulletin say, if the product concerned does not undergo further processing, the cooling thereof to below 5 degrees Celsius immediately after having been heat treated. So that's very important. So if we go out and audit the system, we will always check these three points. I'm going to go into a bit more detail by looking at Annex B of this regulation. So there's 4 points under Annex B in the regulation 1555, and the first one talks specifically about pasteurization of milk, and it gives you 2 options of heat treatment. The first is, as we know it, as batch pasteurization. It's low temperature, long time pasteurization. This method is usually used by small to medium processing facilities. And the parameters that it stipulates in this regulation say that the temperature must be at least 63 degrees Celsius, but not exceeding 65.5 degrees Celsius. So that's very important as your temperature parameter. And then it's also say that every particle must be kept at this specific temperatures for 30 minutes. Okay, so that is your time parameter that we look at. And then thereafter, it should be cooled down immediately, if not processed further, to under 5 degrees Celsius within 30 minutes. So that is the important parameters to note. Then under E, it gives you the parameters if you use plate pasteurization or high temperature short time pasteurization. And again, it states that every particle in the milk shall be heated to at least 72 degrees Celsius and keep it there for 15 seconds, and then it shall be cooled down immediately to 5 degrees Celsius. It is very important to ensure that if you use the plate pasteurizer, the holding tube and the flow rate of the milk through that tube is specifically designed to keep the milk for 15 seconds at a specific temperature. You can also pasteurize milk by any other method as long as after pasteurization that specific milk product will pass the Aschaffenburg-Mullen phosphatase test. Okay, if you look at the next screen, this is just a diagram to explain the process of milk pasteurization. I'm not going to go through this section because it only refers to separation and homogenization of the milk. I'm just going to talk you through the milk pasteurization process. So the milk will enter the plate pasteurizer and it will be preheated. And after that, it will go through this process, go back to the pasteurizer to be heated to about 72 degrees Celsius. I always recommend that we, if the divert valve setting on the pasteurizer is set, that it's not set at 72 degrees Celsius, but a bit higher, 72.5 degrees Celsius, just to make sure that the milk is properly heated. Then it will go through to the holding tube, and it must be kept in this tube for 15 seconds at a required temperature of 72 degrees Celsius. If the milk is kept at that temperature, a signal will be sent to the flow divert valve to say the milk is properly pasteurized, the valve doesn't open, and it will flow past the divert valve and go to the storage tank. However, if the temperature of the milk is for some reason below 72 degrees or it's not held at for 15 seconds, then the flow divert valve will open and it will divert the milk back to the balance tank to go through the whole pasteurization process again. Then we can move on to number 2 in Annex B of Regulation 1555. And here we focus on cream pasteurization of cream or milk or dairy products containing added sweetness. And it also gives us two options. The first option is once again batch pasteurization, and the parameters there is that cream or dairy products containing added sweetness must be heated to at least 66 degrees Celsius and kept at that temperature for 30 minutes. Option B is again plate pasteurization or a high temperature short time pasteurization, and there the parameter is that the product shall be heated to at least 74, it's a bit higher than milk, 74 degrees Celsius, and kept at that temperature for at least 15 seconds. Or you can use any other method prescribed by regulation, provided that the product pass the Aschaffenburg-Mullen phosphatase test after pasteurization. Okay, this is just a diagram explaining the the heat treatment of cream and other dairy products containing sugar. This specifically is for cream. You will see there is some separation between the milk that go through the normal pasteurization process, and the cream is then diverted in some cases to a specific pasteurizer, and the temperature that will be used here will depend on the type of product. If we move on to the next screen, you will see if we pasteurize, for instance, cream, they usually do it at 80 degrees Celsius and keep it at that temperature for 1 to 5 seconds if they use a plate pasteurizer. This is just a summary to explain or to indicate the different time temperature that is used depending on the type of equipment that you use, also depending on the type of product that you pasteurize. Okay, if we go to number 3 in Annexure B of Regulation 1555, it talks specifically about high temperature short time pasteurization, and it states that this process shall be mechanically controlled with regards to temperature, the holding time, and that the equipment or apparatus used shall be calibrated. So pasteurizers make use of a specific type of thermometer. We call it a PT100. Just want to elaborate on this. And it also got a divert valve that is set at a specific temperature for milk, 72 degrees Celsius, as we've read earlier. So let's assume that the pasteurizer is validated. The holding time or the flow rate is of such a nature that the milk is kept in the holding tube for 15 seconds. So the flow rate is correct, and it's kept there for 15 seconds. Now the PT100 will measure the temperature of the product at a specific point in that holding tube and gives a signal to divert to the divert valve. So it's very important to note here that the PT100 must be calibrated or verified. The regulations say it must be calibrated monthly, but it can be a costly affair to calibrate the thermometer on a monthly basis. So what we usually recommend is, yes, calibrate the PT100 6-monthly or yearly, but verify it against your calibrated thermometer at least once a month. Because if the PT100 measures the temperature incorrectly, it can give a wrong signal to the flow divert valve, and unpasteurized or underpasteurized milk may end up in the final product. The last point under Regulation 1555 Annexure B is it states that a thermographic recording must be kept of the pasteurization process. So there must be a recording of the temperatures to show that the product was kept at the specific temperature for a specific time. This picture on the left-hand corner is by old system. The new systems all work on electronic capturing of this data of the temperature during pasteurization. I also would recommend to keep processing records during the whole pasteurization process. And this processing records will, for instance, refer to the time of pasteurization, the start up of that, the time of product, when the products start to flow through the pasteurizer, at the time when the flow divert valve was tested before pasteurization, and records of any lapse of electricity or something that happened during the processing of the product. You can use this processing records and verify it against the thermographic recordings, and to see if all the steps were followed, or if something happened during pasteurization, it will quickly pick it up by comparing the processing records with the thermographic recordings. So just to summarize, the equipment used, either bulk or plate pasteurization, and the product that is pasteurized will determine the time and temperature used for pasteurization. The equipment that is used during pasteurization is very important. For instance, the holding tube, you need to validate that the flow rate of the milk or the product through the pasteurizer is correct for that specific product. You must verify that the flow divert valve works correctly by testing it before pasteurization, and you also need to ensure that the PT100 is calibrated and verified so that it can give the correct signal through to the flow divert valve. And then record keeping of this whole process of the CCP, the thermographic recordings, as well as the processing records with all the parameters and at specific times. And then you need to verify pasteurization by the Aschaffenburg-Mullen phosphatase test, or any test method that is verified against that test method, as described by Scott, for instance, the test strips that is used for verification. And that is my story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya, for your story. We really enjoyed listening to your story. Right, thanks very much to all the speakers. So now it's your turn to ask some questions, because that's obviously why we have this webinar, so that we can help you with some of the challenges that you may be facing. So for all of you out there, please won't you pop some questions into the question bar so that I can give the speakers something to think about. While you're doing that, I've got a few that I would like to pose anyway. So Marietta, Scott, Tanya, won't you put your cameras on so we can see you, and so we can ask you some of the questions. Thanks so much. All right, so Marietta, I'm fascinated by the fact that the consumers that are so determined to drink raw milk are actually sophisticated consumers. So I mean, we have sort of, you know, the parts of the population which traditionally have drank raw milk, and, you know, they have their own animals, and they'll be milking their own animals, and they'll be drinking milk from their own animals. But I have conversations with educated people about why they think it's better to drink raw milk. What is the strategy to try and get through to these more sophisticated, educated consumers regarding the myths that they believe because they read it on Google or Instagram or, you know, those platforms?
That is just about what I wanted to say, is that with Google, everything is at the tip of your fingers and you can get any information you want. And that's actually the problem. Most people don't know how to distinguish between good research and proper science or evidence-based information, and then just the internet information that you, or what you call it, grey literature. So I always say, when we approach people from the Consumer Education Project side about fads or misconceptions they believe, I always ask them they should have a look at who was writing the article, what is their background. In other words, if, I like to say if a doctor says anything about nutrition, you can't trust it because they only have 4 hours of nutrition education throughout their studies. But let's say if a mechanic would write something about nutrition, it would not be something that you can really believe because he doesn't have the right background. So yes, I think the first thing you would need to ask is who wrote it, what research for how long, how many people they included in the study. That's the kind of thing that we would have to tell them to look at. And it's like any fad diet. I mean, if you remember when the Banting diet started, for 2 years, that's about all that you've heard about. And lately, you don't really read about it anymore. So it's just like something that people go for it and they think that that is right. And I think we just need to stand on the fact that it's actually not legal to sell raw milk. Except for those occasions that I've mentioned, because there's no science that we can really say actually enforce that those claims that they make is true in any case.
Now, one of the things you mentioned is that, you know, obviously there are changes that are based on the process. So you know, it's not depending on whether I'm using high temperature or whether I'm using low temperature, long time. I mean, I could see from the graphs that you were putting up that there are minor changes. And if we do go above those temperatures, possibly we could do damage to the nutritional aspect. Do you think that processes are, you know, more focused at this point on the safety of the product and possibly the, you know, the quality attributes? Is the milk pasteurized correctly? So maybe err on the side of higher temperature, not so focused on ensuring the nutritional aspects are maintained or preserved. What's your experience?
I think the nutritional aspects become very important because there's so many health benefits that relate to the use of milk and dairy products, that obviously the nutritional content or value is extremely important. And I want to emphasize that I won't be able to give a percentage, but I would guess at least 90% of all pasteurized milk on the shelves are actually done at a temperature where all of those are still preserved. In other words, all the nutrient value is still preserved. It's really only sterilization that sometimes would lead to loss of some of the nutrients. And also, remember that I mentioned that something like vitamin C and folate is not really something that we would go and look for in milk. So the ones that's sensitive to heat, those are is not necessarily the ones that we would normally get from milk. So I do think that processors do watch out about, you know, the nutritional value of the product as well, and not only the safety. But yeah, safety always comes first. But the message of today is we don't have to think pasteurization as any effect on milk to such an extent that we get the negative, that we won't get the necessarily health benefits.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So some people are saying the question bar is not working. It's definitely not the case. Questions are definitely coming through. So please keep trying. We have a very interesting question here, Tanya, from Itakweni. What about alternative methods of pasteurization? So, you know, there's been UVC processes that have been implemented. I know there's been quite a bit of research that's been done by Stellenbosch University in this regard. It's currently not permitted by law to use any alternative method. But is this something that we should be considering going forward? You know, is this an area where we should perhaps be engaging with the regulators? Is an old regulation? Is it time to update it to consider alternative you know, technology? Tanya, your thoughts?
Yes, Lena, I think there's always room for alternatives and better methods or alternative methods. I think that the problem is the verification of whatever is used. For instance, pasteurization have the phosphatase test, and you can verify, but it's costly to verify if you use any other method like UV treatment of milk, then you will have to go at this moment and do pathogen analysis on the milk, and that's quite expensive. So I think that until there's an alternative to verify other processes, it's always going to be a controversial topic.
Yeah, but I think it's definitely something, you know, we have to move along with the time. So we can't, the regulators do need to, you know, consider moving forward. Okay,
definitely.
right. And Tanya, you said I can set my PT100 at 72.5. Sure, dis baie naby 72. Is that really, you know, I mean, obviously we want the divert valve to work effectively in terms of the CCP. You've got to have a lot of confidence in your controller. Yes, I mean, if you're only giving yourself half a degree spelling.
Yes, Leonard, it will all depend on the type of equipment that you use. If you use high-tech pasteurizers, that's very sensitive. The PT100 is implemented by specialists, know where to put it in the holding line. Then half a degree will be fine. But if you get to a processor and they are using old equipment, not installed by a professional, that is where the problems usually occur. And then you will make maybe another recommendation by you know, using a higher temperature. But the long and the short of it, you need to calibrate your thermometer that you use to send that signal to the flow divert valve to open and close, and it must be installed in the correct position. It doesn't help that you, for instance, put it at the start of the holding line, and by the end of the holding line, the milk is below 72 degrees. It's not held above that for 15 seconds, then you get under pasteurization. And you always need to verify by using the phosphatase test. Just on verification. I just want to elaborate on verification. You cannot verify once a week. You need to verify the pasteurization process on every batch of product that you pasteurize.
Okay. Tanya, only one PT100? Should I not have redundancy on that process? Should there not be more than one?
Linda, there's usually more than one thermometer in the bigger pasteurizers, measuring temperatures of the water used to heat the pasteurizer, the measure or thermometers or PT100s to measure the milk, the outgoing milk, the incoming milk. I'm not the expert on how the whole system is put together, but usually there's more than one thermometer or PT100 implemented on a big pasteurizer or like pasteurizer. Yes.
Cool beans. Okay, I think 4 weeks, the law might say 4 weeks for keeping those records, but I think we have to consider other regulations as well in relation to the product. I mean, I know regulation 638 expects us to keep our processing records for much longer. So I think we have to look at other regulations as well. Okay, I've got a question here from Boitumela, and that is, what's the temperature, you know, the cooling temperature? So, I mean, after coming out of the pasteurizer, we have to get it, I mean, it should be coming out, or, you know, we've got to bring it down to 5 degrees as quickly as possible. Yes, after pasteurization.
That's correct, yeah. If you use batch pasteurization, I think I referred to it, you need to bring down the temperature to below 5 degrees Celsius within 30 minutes, because it's much harder to bring down the temperature of the product when you use batch pasteurization. But within a plate pasteurizer, it's usually cooled down relatively quick by the pasteurizer, and some people also implement a plate cooler to quickly bring down the temperature to below 5 degrees Celsius. Yes, within a few minutes. Then by being able to do that, the quality of the pasteurized milk is definitely much better than than the cooling process taking 30 minutes or longer.
Okay. All right. Now we've got a really technical question here, so hopefully you can answer this. So we've got an artisanal cheesemaker here who's wanting to know whether pasteurization will kill, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Clostridium tyrobutricum. So, I mean, you don't want to have butyric acid, that butyric acid taste when you're maturing your cheese, and you don't want to have late blowing. So am I going to have enough heat treatment to be able to destroy this spore former?
Some spore formers will be able to survive pasteurization, definitely. I'm not sure if I think it all boils down to the quality of the raw milk that you buy in. So if you buy in poor quality raw milk and you start with poor quality raw milk, then the chances of that specific organism surviving 72 degrees by forming spores during the pasteurization process is very good. But therefore, it's always recommended that you start with a good quality raw milk with low microcounts to give you the best chance of a really a quality end product, pasteurized end product.
Perfect. Okay. So Boitumela just has got a follow-up question, Tanya, and I know this is a tricky one, which we're going to have to kind of like live with until the regulation is updated. 1555 says 5 degrees, below 5 degrees. R638 said less than or equal to 4 degrees. So, I mean, 4 degrees is less than 5 degrees, but I know this is a technicality because when we changed R638, for some reason, we put in a 4 instead of a 5. We'd always had a 5, and now we've got this contradiction. Boitumela, I know we are updating 1555. It might take us another year, but we'll have to live with this 4 and 5 issue until such time as 1555 comes into 1555 has been, brought in line with 638.
Yes.
Am I right, Tanya?
Yes.
Unfortunately, we did. Okay. Okay. One question for Scott. And then we're done for today. Thank you for your time, Scott. How much are these strips going to cost me? Sounds like a really easy method. Even I can do it, but convenience always comes at a cost.
No. These strips are well under R1,000 typically. It's all dependent on the volume of strips that one needs. So, because you have to test quite regularly, I always just promote to all my customers as well that they actually take on or consider purchasing in bulk, because what we do is we typically broker more special pricing for guys with the manufacturer as well, so that brings the rand or cost per strip down. But for the 50 strips and that, it's well below R1,000. So it's not that heavy an investment on the strips themselves. And if you're going to have large volumes of testing happening, there's always the customization on the pricing accordingly. It's always just controlled by the rand exchange, as we do import it from Germany, but we are always maintaining stock volumes on these strips. So with that as well in mind, it's we can hold and fix pricings for extended periods of time as well. I know it does have a 1-year shelf life, but they do move quite quickly as well. So there's never really a risk to anybody where they're going to have a situation where they get a strip that only lasts like a couple of months before it expires as well. So, yeah.
There is a cost to food safety, so we do understand this, and I think what you're saying is you're trying to keep that cost as practical as possible. Well, thank you, Marietta, Scott, Tanya, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your knowledge about this process. I think to everyone who's listening, please can you go and tell at least 5 friends that they should not drink raw milk. There's more than enough evidence from all the way around the world to show that it is not in the best interest of public health. So let's keep doing the good things that we're doing to ensure that the public is protected by pasteurizing milk in the right way and verifying that, and that's the most important thing. Thanks everyone for being with us. Thanks to the speakers. Thanks to the DSA for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you, Linda. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.